Welcome, everybody, to the April 2025 meeting of the Metropolitan Washington Old Time Radio Club. And we are very excited tonight. We're having a few technical difficulties, so I apologize if they disrupt anything. But we are delighted that Dr. Joe Webb has agreed to join us tonight and share yet more of his research on suspense. So that is very exciting.
Okay, now this quiz says it's relatively speaking. I will launch
Frank, you used last month's link today because relatively speaking was attached with the last. What's next is for the love of God. I'm sorry, everybody. I really apologize for this. Frankly, I'm a little bit at a loss what to do. All right, I have the questions written out.
Oh, I have them written out.
Okay, well, we also have a caller. We won't have a poll. So everybody grab your paper, grab your pen. We're going low tech, old school on this.
Oh, yeah.
Got it?
Yes.
If not, I always have a printed copy of the quiz.
Yes.
In case of a power outage or something.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So I'll go ahead with the quiz then.
If you wouldn't mind.
Of course.
Thank you, Kelly.
Okay. Here we go, everyone. I hope you all have your pen and paper. Here we go. Okay. The quiz theme is excellent. Glad to see it. Excellent. I'm glad you're prepared, Wendy. Very good. All okay. The theme is next, please. Question 1. Lorene Tuttle was the first to play Gildersleeve's niece, Marjorie. Who was the second? The options: A. Mary Lee Robb, B. Penny Singleton, C. Eleanor Donahue, D. Kathy Lewis. Lorene Tuttle was the first to play Gildersleeve's niece, Marjorie. Who was the second? Was it Mary Lee Robb, or A. Mary Lee Robb, B. Penny Singleton, C. Eleanor Donahue, or D. Kathy Lewis? And I think I can I can share my screen with the quiz so everyone can see it, if that would help.
Oh, that's a lovely idea, Kelly.
I mean,
thank you.
We can't you can't vote, as it were, but okay.
Well, you can write down the answers on a scrap of paper. Well, great. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
God bless your creativity.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Moving on to question 2. Raymond Edward Johnson was the first host on Inner Sanctum Mysteries. When he left to serve in the Army, who took his place? A. Paul McGrath, B. Barry Kroger, C. Maurice Tarplin, D. Ernest Chappell. One more time. Raymond Edward Johnson was the first host of Inner Sanctum. When he left to serve in the Army, who took his place? A. Paul McGrath, B. Barry Kroger, C. Maurice Tarplin, D. Ernest Chappell. Question 3. Henry Aldrich actor Ezra Stone also entered the service. Each of the following actors subsequently played the part of Henry before Stone returned, but who was the first to replace Stone? A. Bobby Ellis, B. Raymond Ives, C. Norman Tokar, D. Dickie Jones. Okay, now I just got an idea. Please tell me, you all, if this is a good idea, or we could launch the quiz from that's. It's not the right quiz, but people could still vote for A, B, C, or D. So we could still have people vote. We would just have to correlate that it's a different question. Is that not a good idea? Maybe.
I think it sounds perfectly acceptable. I don't know how the rest of you think. Any thoughts? Thumbs up, thumbs down. Let's not overcomplicate it, Kelly. I mean,
Okay.
at this point, in for a penny, in for the pound.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Okay. Okay.
We will
Okay.
forge ahead.
Okay, will do. Okay, and just question 3 one more time. Henry Aldrich, actor Ezra Stone, also entered the service. Each of the following actors subsequently played the part of Henry before Stone returned, but who was the first to replace Ezra Stone? A. Bobby Ellis, B. Raymond Ives, C. Norman Tokar, or D. Dickie Jones? Question 4. We all remember that Agnes Moorehead was the first to play the lovely Margot Lane on The Shadow. Many actresses played the part after Ms. Moorehead, but who was next? A. Leslie Woods, B. Grace Matthews, C. Margot Stevenson, or D. Gertrude Anderson? We all remember Agnes Moorehead was the first to play the lovely Margot Lane on The Shadow. Many actresses played the part after Ms. Moorehead, but who was next? A. Leslie Woods, B. Grace Matthews, C. Margot Stevenson, or D. Gertrude Anderson? Question 5. Frank Parker was the first featured singer for Jack Benny. When he left the show, who was his replacement? A. Kenny Baker, B. Dennis Day, C. Michael Bartlett, or D. Bob Crosby? Question 5. Frank Parker was the first featured singer for Jack Benny. When he left the show, who was his replacement? A. Kenny Baker, B. Dennis Day, C. Michael Bartlett, or D. Bob Crosby? Question 6. Harold Perry played the Gildersleeve character on Fibber McGee and Molly, then got his show, The Great Gildersleeve. When Perry left that show, he was replaced by which sound-alike actor? A. Paul Frees, B. Willard Waterman, C. Bill Thompson, or D. Alan Reed? Harold Perry played the Gildersleeve character on Fibber McGee and Molly, then got his show, The Great Gildersleeve. When Perry left that show, which sound-alike actor replaced him? Was it A. Paul Frees, B. Willard Waterman, C. Bill Thompson, or D. Alan Reed? Question 7. Marlon Hurt played the maid Beulah on Fibber McGee and Molly. At his untimely passing, which actor took over the role? A. Ethel Waters, B. Louise Beavers, C. Hattie McDaniel, or D. Butterfly McQueen? Question 7. Marlon Hurt played the maid Beulah on Fibber McGee and Molly. At his untimely passing, which actor took over the role? A. Ethel Waters, B. Louise Beavers, C. Hattie McDaniel, or D. Butterfly McQueen? Question 8. An actor using the pseudonym Jack Deeds played the Lone Ranger for one episode. The next actor played the part for 8 years until his untimely death in a car accident. Who was he? Was it A. Ernie Winstanley, B. Brace Beamer, C. Earl Grasser, or D. J. Michael? Question 8. An actor using the pseudonym Jack Deeds played the Lone Ranger for one episode. The next actor played the part for 8 years until his untimely death in a car accident. Who was he? A. Ernie Winstanley, B. Brace Beamer, C. Earl Grasser, or D. J. Michael? Question 9. Al Hodge was the first to play the Green Hornet. He too went off to serve in World War II. Who took over the role from Hodge? A. Brace Beamer, B. Robert Hall, C. Jack McCarthy, or D. Donovan Faust? Question 9. Al Hodge was the first to play the Green Hornet. He too went off to serve in World War II. Who took over the role from Hodge? A. Brace Beamer, B. Robert Hall, C. Jack McCarthy, or D. Donovan Faust? Last but not least, number 10. On Duffy's Tavern, several actresses played Miss Duffy. The first, Shirley Booth, was married to the show's creator and lead actor, Ed Gardner. Who was the next Miss Duffy when the Gardners' marriage went south? A. Ethel Merman, B. Florence Hallop, C. Hazel Sherman, or D. Mercedes McCambridge? Question 10, on Duffy's Tavern, several actresses played Miss Duffy. The first, Shirley Booth, was married to the show's creator and lead actor, Ed Gardner. Who was the next Miss Duffy when the Gardners' marriage went south? A. Ethel Merman, B. Florence Hallop, C. Hazel Sherman, or D. Mercedes McCambridge? And we will not be voting. I don't know if I should leave the questions up or...
I don't think you need to leave it.
I can't, because we're going to do other things with other
We're
images.
going to do other things on the share screen.
Sure.
And you know, the idea between keeping it up, the idea behind that was so that would give people extra time. Although with Dr. Joe, I doubt anybody's going to be doubling back and trying to answer questions to the quiz. Seriously doubt it. And with your indulgence, I do see Karl Schadow on the call now. So let's do our not so first 15 and endeavor to make up a little time. Karl, are you all primed and ready to go?
I'm ready to go. We'll run through this. And as soon as Frank tells me that the first slide is up, we'll go.
Well, all right, no problem. I am going to give Frank the co-hosting privileges. And so, Frank, you have the Shudder Tremble keys to the kingdom. Please, anybody else who isn't mute, please mute if you're not Karl. Beautiful.
Ready, Karl.
Thank you, Frank. All right, great. All right, the topic for today is showstoppers, and got to make a little dive at Zoom. No, they're not the topic this evening, although they almost stopped my show, but we're going to continue on here with this interesting 15-minute program, Showstoppers. It was a very unique interview program, which had stars from stage, screen, and radio, as I have across the top there. And as we move on, it was a unique program that where the stars were actually the main attraction and not the host. For example, you know, Hedda Hopper or Luella Parsons, they basically took over their programs. But for Showstoppers, the stars were really the front and center. The program was created in 1945, late 1945, by writer Sidney Resnick, who was a writer for Jimmy Durante, Ed Wynn, and later Bob Hope, and also Johnny Carson. He sold the program to Music Corporation of America, better known as MCA, who sold it to Corette of California, one of the major woman apparel manufacturers and clothers in the country. And if you notice the green arrows there, I made them green because, as we all know, it's all about the money. And we're going to move on to the next slide. The producers of the program were Cecil Hackett from the Abbott and Company ad agency. They worked, he and his assistant Miriam Traeger worked with the Corettes, and Gertrude Smith, who is the Corettes advertising director, and Al Citron, the Corettes public relations director, to get this show on the road. On the left there, in the next slide, is Paul Dudley. He was the writer and director of Showstoppers. He had previously been involved in such shows as Pot of Gold and Spotlight Bands, and during World War II, he was the production officer for the Glenn Miller Orchestra while it was over in England. On the right, we have Frank Ram, announcer. Many of you would recognize his voice and also his picture. He was a narrator on Romance of the Ranchos. Also in the cast of Cavalcade of America, Theater of Romance, and later as Jeff Regan, the detective series. The hosts for Showstoppers were Knox Manning and Jim Amici. Showstoppers was recorded on both coasts, both in Hollywood and in New York. In Hollywood, it was Knox Manning. He had been an announcer, longtime announcer on NBC shows such as Sherlock Holmes and CBS Melody and Madness, and also did much work for the movie studios, Columbia Pictures, Warner Brothers, and RKO Radio Pictures. Jim Amici, we all know from being Jack Armstrong while he was in Chicago, before moving to New York, where he was in Big Sister, Here's to Romance, and many other shows. So let's move on to the audio, Frank.
Loret of California and San Francisco, creators of feminine sportswear, join with their distributors from coast to coast to present Showstoppers. And here comes a showstopper. Featuring your host, yours truly, Knox Manning. And starring the story in the riotous comedy of
Bud Abbott and
Costello.
Showstoppers. The spotlight is on that once-in-a-lifetime, thrilling, exciting moment in the careers of the great stars of Hollywood and Broadway. The moment when they stood breathlessly between success and failure, and then stopped the show. In the language of show business, that means turning the corner from the darkness of obscurity into the Klieg lights of world acclaim. It's the first step that leads to fame and fortune. Each week, Showstoppers brings you a star and a story. This week, it's two stars with the same story, Abbott and Costello.
Costello, where have you been? Oh, I had to go out to the fish market, Abbott, and buy 500 pounds of fish.
500 pounds of fish? What are you going to do with all that fish?
I still have 500 Christmas seals at home. Somebody's got to feed them.
Yes, sir, they always make you laugh. Believe me, there's nobody in show business like them. Abbott and Costello, Bud and Lou, welcome to Showstoppers.
Thanks, Knox. We're very glad to be here. Isn't that right, Costello?
I'll say. Why are we here?
Primarily to get you to tell us about your big showstopper. But first, some vital statistics.
All right, Knox, shoot.
Well, I've never done this with two stars at the same time. I hardly know where to begin.
Oh, don't let that worry you. Just ask the questions and we'll answer them.
Well, let's see. Where were you born?
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Where did you get started in show business?
Burlesque.
Burlesque.
Who gave you your first real break?
Kate Smith.
Kate Smith.
What was your original big showstopper?
Streets of Paris.
Streets of Paris.
Oh, now, wait a minute. What is this double talk you're giving me? New Jersey, Burlesque, Kate Smith.
It isn't double talk, Knox. That's the way it was.
Well, I'm still completely befuddled. Suppose we go back and talk about these things one at a time. Now, let's see. You're both from New Jersey, right?
Right.
Costello's from Patterson.
And Abbott's from Asbury Park.
And you both started out in burlesque?
Yes. Abbott is a straight man.
And Costello as a comedian.
As a team?
No, we didn't know each other in the early days. We both drifted around a good deal. I guess it...
Oh, I see. Sort of trying to find your right spot in show business, huh?
I guess so, Knox. Burlesque is a wonderful school for comedy. You know, its alumni include such great stars as Jimmy Durante, W.C. Fields, Bobby Clark, Sophie Tucker, Bert Lahr.
And Abbott and Costello. So you met in burlesque, decided you were good for each other, and there were your names in bright lights.
No, not so fast, Knox. Lou and I saw some pretty lean times before we ever saw our names in lights.
You said it, Bud. Lots of times we didn't know where our next engagement was coming from. Or our next meal, for that matter.
And then along came Kate Smith.
Yes. Kate gave us a spot on her radio show, and the listeners seemed to like our type of comedy.
That's all right, Lou. And so did Schubert. Well, he happened to hear that program and called us up morning One morning, I meant to say, to see if we'd appear in Streets of Paris, that great Broadway hit.
All of which sounds like a trip on the magic carpet to me.
Yes, only our carpet was made out of a hot dog, and the magic was supplied by the mustard on it.
A hot dog? That sounds exciting. But now, just how does your present success tie up with a Frankfurter?
Well, Lou and I were going through one of those extra lean periods in our career. One noon, we dropped in on lunch at a little hot dog stand on 42nd Street in New York City. I was so hungry, I didn't pay any attention to Lou until I was finished. When I looked up, I saw that he hadn't even started on his hot dog. What's the matter? What's the matter, Costello?
It's got mustard on it, Abbott.
Well, sure, all hot dogs have mustard on them.
But I don't like mustard.
Well, what's the matter with mustard?
Oh, I didn't say there was anything the matter with it. I just don't like mustard.
You don't like it. Then why did you order a hot dog?
Because I like them.
Then why don't you eat it?
Because it's got mustard on it.
Everybody likes mustard on hot dogs. That's what makes them taste good. That's why they sell so many of them. Suppose nobody liked mustard. What would happen to the hot dog business? Well, what would happen to the mustard?
Wait a minute, Bud.
Well, what's the matter?
I've got it.
What?
That's it. That's the routine we've been looking for. That's the kind of an act you and I should do.
An idea born in a little hot dog stand off Broadway led to the success of Abbott and Costello. We'll be back for the rest of the story behind your big showstopper in just a few moments.
For everything to wear under the sun, it's sportswear by Corette of California. In a variety that's the spice of California living. Enjoy the casual comfort of trick skirts and pleat skirts, the smart tailoring of girdle slacks, and to complete each costume is the trim cardigan jacket. For feminine sportswear interpreted with fresh originality, it's Corette of California.
Back to the story of Abbott and Costello and their showstopper. So a little hot dog stand-off Times Square was the birthplace of your success, huh?
Well, it gave us an idea, and we worked on it and elaborated on it.
We set it in a baseball park because that's where people eat the most hot dogs.
And then you got your chance to try it out in the Broadway show, Streets of Paris.
Yes. And the fact that Schubert liked it gave us a lot of confidence.
Yes, we needed it. Because we were important company then. Big people, Bobby Clark, Luella Gear, Carmen Miranda.
Then up went the curtain at the Broadhurst Theater in New York City on that June 19th, 1939. And a smart first-night audience acclaimed two new stars in the Broadway sky.
Well, Lou, here we are at the Broadhurst.
Oh, Abbott.
What?
Here it is, our first big Broadway show, eh?
Yes, sir.
Is this a beautiful theater over here?
Broadhurst, I should
Get
say.
a load of this theater.
Marvelous.
Look at that wall over there.
Yes.
Isn't that a beautiful wall?
It certainly is.
You know what that wall reminds me of?
What?
This one over here.
Oh, well, naturally, walls are walls. Suppose you walked over there and you bored a hole in that wall.
All right, I walk over there and I bore a hole in the wall.
Why? Why should you go over there and bore a hole in that wall?
I'm not boring no hole in the wall.
Why should you go over there and bore a hole in that
Wait
wall?
a minute, you made a suggestion. You said suppose you walk over there and bore a hole in the wall.
Yes.
I was dopey enough to say I'll go over and bore a hole in the wall.
That's no-
But you're not going to put that blame on me, brother.
Now, wait a minute.
I don't go around boring holes in walls.
I understand.
If I want to get out of here, I don't have to go out through a hole in the wall.
That I know.
They got excites here if I want to get out.
Excite.
E-X-I-T, out.
Excite. Well, what makes you so dumb?
Oh, that just comes to me natural.
Sure. You don't know what you're talking about. Suppose you walk into a baseball park. What teams are playing?
I don't know.
Then what are you doing in that baseball park?
I don't know, buddy. You got me in there, now get me out.
What is the first thing you buy in a baseball park?
A hot dog.
A hot dog.
Without mustard.
All right. Oh, no, mustard goes with the hot dog.
Not with mine.
Mustard was made for the hot dog.
I don't care what the stuff is made for. I'm not going to eat it. I don't like it. I mean, after all, I don't like mustard.
Listen, mustard and a hot dog go together.
Let them go together. I don't want to spoil any romance. I mean, after all, if I don't like mustard, I don't have to eat it for you or nobody else.
Well, I didn't know you disliked it. I didn't know.
What do you think, yeah, big man? If you come and eat mustard, I got to eat mustard?
I'm sorry.
Mustard burns my tongue, and I don't want to eat it.
All right, we'll forget about
If I eat mustard, I get sick and I can't work. You know what happens, don't you?
Yes.
You know I'm a married man.
I know that.
You know I got a wife and two
Yeah,
children.
let's get
Well, if
that.
I eat mustard and I get sick and I can't work, what happens with the money? I ain't got no money.
All right,
Then my kids wind up in the orphan asylum.
Wait a minute.
You're a fine guy sending my kids to an orphan asylum.
What are you talking about? Do you know
What
you're
do my
saying?
kids ever do to you?
Nothing at all.
What right you got to send my kids to an orphan asylum?
Just a minute.
Come on, get my kids out of the orphan
Now, wait a
asylum.
minute. This whole thing started over nothing.
Well, I'm not going to eat mustard for you and
All
nobody
right, so
else.
you don't eat it.
I like Worcestershire, Shores.
You like what? You like what?
Worcestershire. Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire sauce. But you don't like mustard. I don't like mustard, no. All right, wait a minute. Give me a reason. Who are you that you shouldn't like mustard? What are you, too big a shot to like mustard? What did mustard ever do for me? Oh, no, wait. Oh, if I don't like it, I'm not going to eat it. All right, so you don't eat it. So throw it away. I won't eat it. All right, wait a minute. All right, look, let's not argue about it then. Suppose you walk out on a bridge and you jump off. I'm not jumping off any bridge. There you go. Then what are you doing on that bridge? I'm not on any bridge. There's two things I don't like, and it's bridges and mustard. And if you want to burn me up, Abbott, all you got to do is stick me in the middle of a bridge with a handful of mustard. There you go. What has all this got to do with me boring a hole in the wall? Never mind that. That's what started the whole trouble. That damage is already done. Figure you'll get a bill for that before you leave the theater. Here's what I want. You don't like mustard. Do you know where mustard comes from? I know they don't scrape it off a mustard plaster. No. They manufacture mustard. Do you know they spend millions of dollars every year to manufacture mustard? You know they spend millions of dollars just to put up buildings to manufacture mustard? You know those buildings employ thousands and thousands of men just to manufacture mustard? You know those men take care of thousands and thousands of families, all on account of mustard? And you, just because you don't like mustard, what do you want them to do? Tear those factories down and put all those people out of work? Do you mean to stand there and tell me just because I don't eat mustard, I'm going to wreck the mustard factories? Are you trying to tell me that those thousands and thousands of people are making one little jar of mustard just for me? Wait till I explain this. Well, if they are, you can tell them not to make it anymore because I'm not going to eat it. All right. I am not supporting thousands of people. Who said anything about supporting? If I eat mustard, what happens to the people working in the Worcestershire sauce factory? Let's close one factory at a time. You don't like this, you don't like that, you don't know what you like. Suppose you walk into a restaurant. You walk into a restaurant. Now, don't get excited. Don't get excited. I'm not getting excited. I walk into a restaurant, and now what happens? All right, now the waiter places on one side of the table great big juicy steak. On the other side, a platter of beans. Which one of these two would you eat? I eat the beans. What happens to the steak? I don't want the steak. I eat the beans. Well, why did you order the steak if you didn't? I didn't order nothing. You said a waiter comes over and puts steak over here and beans on the other side. That's right. You asked me which of the two I would eat. That's right. I was nice enough not to sponge on you. What have I got to do with this? I say I eat the beans. But what are we going to do with that steak? You can throw it away. Wait a minute. Thousands of people throughout the world starving to death, and you're throwing steaks away? There's a fine reputation. All right, never mind the beans. I'll eat the steak. You'll eat the steak. Do you know where that steak comes from? A cow. I hope. That steak comes from a cow. Do you know what that cow gives? No. That cow gives milk. No, she don't. You got to take it away from her. Who does that milk supply? Little babies, little innocent tots. Without that milk, they'd perish, die. And you, just because you want to be a hog and eat steaks, you let him kill all the cows and let the little babies of the world starve to death. I'm a bad boy. I'll say you are. I'm killing babies, cows, putting people out of work. Yeah. I'm a louse. You are. This whole thing started with a burn a hole in the wall. Never mind that. It's not over nothing. You won't answer one little simple question. Why don't you ask me something with a little sense to it? All right, suppose you walk into a railroad depot. Say the Grand Central Depot in New York City. Now, you buy a ticket. Where are you going? I'm not going anywhere. And what are you doing in the depot? I'm not in a depot. And what are you buying a ticket for? Ask me that again slow. You're in a depot. I'm in a depot. Where are you going? I don't know. Well, make up your mind. You've got to be going somewhere. I'll go this way. Where is that? What direction is that? That's over there. Where are you going? We want to know where you're going. Tell the folks where you're going. I'll go to Baltimore. I don't want to go, but I'll go. Baltimore? What's the matter with Philadelphia? I got friends in Baltimore. Suppose you had friends in Philadelphia. All right, then I go to Philadelphia. What happened to your friends in Baltimore? I'm not talking to them anymore. Suppose your wife was in Philadelphia. Then I go to Chicago.
Abbott and Costello's famous mustard routine stopped the show that opening night at the Broadhurst Theater in New York, and they've been stopping them ever since on the air, in the theater, and the movies. Today, they're a couple of the greatest showstoppers in the business.
of California in San Francisco and the distributors throughout the nation have presented Showstoppers. Listen again next week for Celeste Holm, another great showstopper.
Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. And there are our two comedians there, Lou and Bud, with Bud holding the mustard jar. How many of you thought that it would have been their famous baseball routine, who's on first? Nope, it was the mustard routine. I thought that was fascinating. Well, what about the music? Did any of you guess the theme music? You Are My Lucky Star. It was performed by Jimmy Lytle and his orchestra. Jimmy was a prominent clarinetist and orchestra leader from the 20s into the 40s, conducting shows for Coca-Cola on radio in the 40s. And You Were My Lucky Star, he arranged that catchy tune, which was an upbeat version of the Brown and Freed composed show music that was for the 1935 film Broadway Melody of 1936. The song was also sung by Gene Kelly in Singing in the Rain, and also by Liza Minnelli in New York, New York, so perhaps some of you did recognize that song. There was 26 episodes in Showstoppers, produced in 1946. Some of the other stars that covered the gamut from A to Z, well, almost. Ann Rutherford to Xavier Cugat, and others were Ethel Merman and Boris Karloff, among many others. There's much publicity, and the program was very versatile scheduling for radio stations. Could be aired at the morning. KFJZ was in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Could be aired at 12 noon. KSD was St. Louis. Some of the ads in newspapers also included the star. Ted Lewis was a prominent vocalist at that time. And the program could also be aired at night. KGU is out of Honolulu in the still territory of Hawaii. And if you notice that half-hour slot down there at the bottom of that ad, a lot of moves sponsored a half hour with Showstoppers, the first 15 minutes, and then music at the following 15 minutes. And it was a great program for the mainland and also Hollywood, especially the critique of sales management. You see there the radio show success on the mainland, but met with even warmer reception from the audience in Hawaii. Playing in Hollywood Notables made a considerable hit. And also radio showmanship, simply that they had top flight talent and a great orchestra. I thought overall the production was excellent. The live audiences were used when appropriate, especially for comedy such as Abbott and Costello, and there was widespread publicity. Let's see, let's move on to audio. Now, there's not very many episodes available, unfortunately, of this series. Old-time radio researchers and also Radio Echoes Online. And I'm going to give a shout out to Radio Spirits, who I wrote the liner notes for this Listener Series Volume 3, which I first learned about this program last year when this was released. Dick Powell and Eddie Rochester Anderson were some of the episodes that we included in the Radio Spirits set last year that was released. And in closing, I want to plug Reed Bunzel's book on Joe Corrette's story, Fascinating History of Corrette of California. Joe and his wife Stephanie, how they funded the program in '38 and continued it through the war years and after the firm was sold and resold through the '90s. And I don't know who currently owns the brand, but Corrette is still available. Yours truly on the right. I want to thank Frank Morgan for his assistance with the slides and getting me going this evening. John Abbott for audio. David Sager, one of the reference staff at the Library of Congress, Recorded Sound Research Center, helped me identify the theme song. And Jerry Henniges for the ET label. I want to thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Carl, do you know how many stations picked this up?
Over 200.
Wow.
Yep. Very successful show. And then in 1947, it was only available in 1946. 1947, Corrette opted to do minute transcriptions, but they kept in radio. They were very successful and had a pretty good radio advertising and were successful. I thought radio was very successful for them.
Carl, it's John. I have a quick question. I noticed on the label for the recording, it said start outside 33 1/3 RPM.
Yes. Yeah, the transcriptions could be, see, I just pulled that back up. Yeah, some of them started from the inside, some of them started from the outside. It just depended upon how they recorded the programs. And that's really all I can tell you. Sometimes they started from the inside and, reversed it. And then other times they would start like you would play a regular LP, put on the outside record and it would play toward the center.
Okay.
I'd like to say thank you, Carl. That was absolutely delightful. And once again, you have put another show on my radar that I wasn't aware of. So I continue to learn at your feet. Thank you.
Had anybody else heard of this program?
A lot of head wagging. No.
I had
No,
seen
but
it
this
in
No?
is
the
Okay,
great.
well.
but I never listened to one.
Dr. Joe is saying he was aware of it, but hadn't heard any.
Okay.
I think you picked a delightful episode, especially since, the baseball season is getting started. And I didn't realize that they had other routines where a ballpark was the lead in to the
Right,
routine.
exactly. Yeah, I would have thought it would have been the baseball routine, but it was not. But it was interesting that Jimmy Lytle, in collaboration with the, of course, producing director, did play "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." So it kind of reminded listeners there that, hey, Abbott Costello, sure, they're who's on first is out there also. So kind of in the background, kind of a little kind of an inside joke by the orchestra there.
Well done. Well done.
Carl? Oh, I did have a.
Yes.
Didn't the Who's On First that was introduced on the Kate Smith show, was it not?
Right. Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
So I think I'm trying to remember what year. Do you know what year the program was that you played?
Showstoppers was in 1946, but
Okay.
their routine was, what did Knox say, 1938 or 39?
Yeah,
I can't remember what he said when they.
I think they were trying to do one that they did early that brought them to prominence.
Exactly. No.
Does anyone else have any other questions or observations or curiosities? Well, then I think we will move on. Carl, thank you for your sheer determination to get into this call. You will notice you were the only one who was actually dialed in on this call. And I'm glad we were able to solve that problem and figure it out.
Well, I've got Frank. I called Frank, so Frank helped me out a lot. So I do appreciate it again, Frank.
Well done, Frank. Well, good. So I think this is about the point at which Dr. Joe would make his presentation, and then we'll have the answers to the quiz afterwards. Is that acceptable?
Sounds good.
Of course, everybody's on mute, so they could be screaming and I wouldn't know. But Dr. Joe, do you need, I'm sure, have slides? Yes?
Yes.
All right, I will give you the co-hosting privileges. Let's see. We are. There we go. You are now a co-host. You have the keys to the kingdom.
Am I supposed to get, or just click share? I don't get a notice anymore, right?
Right. Well,
Okay.
right. You can share screen, share your
Okay.
screen. That should work. God willing. Yay.
Yay.
And we have contact.
Ta-da. Look at that.
Beautiful.
Okay. All right. So there's so much to talk about on Suspense. I figured I'll just talk about everything. But as I'm working through the slides, I could easily go on with 2 or 3 hours, um, and have viable topics to talk about. It's just it's such an amazing series. Part of it is because of the anthology, so they had new writers and new performers all the time. But it's also all the backstory behind making this stuff work is really, really interesting. And sometimes that backstory and all the meanderings around with the executives is more interesting than some of the plays. Um, but first, I want to update people on some of the things that are going on. We've got a bunch of volunteers at OTRR, which is, remember, it's a social media organization. There's nothing formal about old-time radio researchers at all. It's just people who meet and volunteer to do things. And since 2020, when we got involved with the Joe Hain collection, we've been on a mission to get as many Pioneer collector reels as possible and transfer them so they could be in FLAC format as opposed to MP3. And we can also upgrade the sound across the board of so many different series. And it's going well. I mean, we've got more reels than we know what to do with. And it's taking some time. We must have gotten somewhere around 30,000 to 40,000 reels from all these different collections that you see on the screen. The Joe Hain thing was the thing that got it rolling, and then other people started to see that we were doing it. So we got involved with Ron Bowser was a very influential collector in the 1970s, and everybody knows John Dunning, so we got their collections basically. Everyone knows Jerry Hendigas. He sent us all his reels. They're being distributed from Los Angeles. We have a collector who's managing that, and as a lot of collectors were passing on, Jerry was getting their collections. We have like 6 Pioneer collections in with Jerry's reels that we've been working with. And then more of a typical mainstream collector, I guess you want to call it like a second tier group of reels that we're finding a lot of very interesting things in that are in Florida. And that may have been close to 35,000 reels there that we've been going through. And we also got the Don Aston reels. Don was a dealer that many people bought from in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. And there's also 10,000 discs there that Don Ramlow has moved to Michigan and is in the process of starting to send those out. It's been interesting because there's a technology aspect to all of this, even though things have been circulating for a while, like some of those discs. The software that we have to clean them up and do a really nice job on them is so much better that a lot of the programs, especially the top rated programs like Nightbeat and such, are really worth doing over again. We have a few groups of volunteers. Knights of the Turning Table are the ones who transfer the discs. Then we have about 8 people transferring reels. And we need more people to help organize all the different files that we have. I'm doing Suspense for the most part. So I've been just grabbing all that stuff whenever I could see it or could find it and doing that. But there are other people working on all the other series. Now, in the Florida reels, just 2 weeks ago, we found a new Johnny Dollar program, and it came from some air checks from the 1960s that people were making. The most important person for the completion of Suspense during that time was a collector named Pat Rispoli, who lived in Schenectady, New York, and worked in the court system for New York State. And he was recording everything off the air. He unfortunately passed away at age 53 in 1979. But thank goodness he was a very aggressive trader. His programs could be found all over the country. And one thing that we were looking for was the original air checks, the recordings that he made from the station without editing anything out. No, all the local commercials are intact, all the news is intact, and things like that. And we started to find them in some of the Pioneer collections that he traded with, especially in John Dunning and Ron Bowser's collections. These are terrific because, first of all, they're in very good sound, and you get the full context of the program. It's nice to hear the programs in the way that they were originally heard. And Pat was looking to get baseball programs and football games. So he had people all around the country recording those, and he was trading Suspense and Johnny Dollar and Gunsmoke and Have a Gun with them as air checks. So there was enough copies of things around for him to do that. This particular Johnny Dollar did not come from one of those Pat Rispoli's, but someone else. And I'm still trying to figure out who it was and what station they recorded from. But this was a program that that John was not aware of. It surprised me because the first place I looked was in John's books. And I said, gosh, this is really weird. And then I started to look online in the newspapers, and this title wasn't there because CBS Publicity was just sending out information about the plot, not about the title. So I sent it to him, and John figured this out and realized that the log had to be updated, that there was a placeholder program in the log called the Firebug matter, which didn't exist, and that we already had the Cinder Elmer matter, and this program was before that. So, John, if you want to join in, and if you want to talk about the program a bit, that would be great.
Sure. You know, I'm always willing to.
All right, that's enough. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Joe. You spell your name with 1 B or 3 B? Anyway,
keep going.
When Joe sent me this program, I was absolutely flabbergasted that, you know, something is kind of like, you know, opening up King Tut's tomb, just earth shattering. And I started looking to where it would go. And fortunately, I looked at one program called the Mad Bomber Matter. And the next week tag in that program talked about a beautiful young lady, a handful of coins, and a mysterious disappearance, which nails this program right where it needed to be. I have a date, and like I say, everything has been updated, and it's out there for the listening.
So I created that link on the page. So if you went there later, preferably not while I'm talking, although I mean, why should you be any different than family? You can go there and you can hear that brand new Johnny Dollar, brand new with quotes around it to collectors, and a lot of other background that he has gathered for that. So it's a good show. It's with Mandel Kramer, and it's in relatively good sound. Some of these air checks are not always in the best sound, but I was able to clean it up and to make it much more listenable. So that's a surprise. So here I am. I'm looking for a Suspense, and I know that these air checks are around, and I found a Johnny Dollar, which is absolutely terrific.
One thing, Joe, just want to let everybody know that I will put this URL in the YouTube comments so they don't have to, you know, fumble around trying to find a piece of paper and pencil and write it down. It'll be there.
Okay. I thought I would take just a very quick amount of time to tell you the kind of support that we have. We're always looking for people to get involved with transferring reels. We have free reel decks. Jerry Hendickus had about 30 or 40 reel decks that work, and we've been refurbishing them, and we send them for free. All people have to do is pay for shipping, which is usually below $100. and they can start getting involved with transferring reels. We need people to help organize the audio files, make sure the file names are consistent and accurate, and then we're also doing a lot of other research. So at the bottom of the OTRR page, there's information about the contributing and helping our costs with that, and that's the end of my commercial. But now the Suspense project, which started online in 2023, but I've been trying to upgrade the series for it's almost 20 years. And when we got the reels from California and from Joe Hain, I started to realize that we had a really good opportunity to upgrade the entire series from beginning to end, because some of these collectors had access to the original discs, and as opposed to the copy of a copy of a copy that floated around the hobby for a long time, each time adding some electronic noise and some tape hiss, and you were also at the mercy of their skill at setting their volume levels correctly and having the equipment with the right speed and the like. So that's when the idea came that we can start pulling all these different collections together and start working on them. And just like when Yogi Berra said you could, sometimes you could see a lot just by looking, sometimes you can hear a lot just by listening, and you find there's a lot of really cool stuff in the programs once you start putting some information about what's going on in the news, what's going on with the actors and the writers, start pulling all that together. It makes for a fascinating story. So we're doing the episode by episode restoration. That's coming along great. We've replaced a lot of bad sounding programs, especially from the late 1950s, where there's some really bad air checks and because there were no discs. We've been finding AFRS discs and making fresh transcriptions of them. We're also looking for multiple versions of the broadcast, such as the original network broadcast, the East and West, which really only affects the Roma series, professional air checks. There were people recording Suspense to use as models for acting or just because they knew someone on the program. So those were often professional air checks done by a studio. And the home recorded air checks are very important toward the end of the series. And of course, looking for AFRS and AFRTS programs. So right now, the project has finished the 1959 Hollywood run. The series moved to New York for the August 30, 1959 broadcast. So we're going to start working on that. We have a tremendous amount of tape to go through on this period. A lot of pioneer collectors stopped collecting Suspense once it moved to New York. They wanted all the Hollywood stuff. So this is going to be a little more difficult to do, but I believe from some of the things we've gotten that we're going to be okay. We should be completed with 1962 in August 2025, and the last blog post is going to be in December 2025. That's when we'll post the Devilstone. We're posting everything in order, so it's pretty straightforward. And then I'll just do some occasional blog posts about the show history. We've already started to get some revisions and additional versions of programs. We're not going near any of those right now. We just want to make sure we get everything through, get all the programs done. But it's been coming along. We have a lot of people helping, some from around the world. Keith Scott, who is a voice actor who lives in Sydney, Australia area, was collecting Suspense in the 1970s when he would come over here to work for various animation studios, and he was paying $35 or $50 for a fresh disc copy of many of these programs, and he's been sharing them with me for the past 3 years. So there's a lot of upgrades and a lot of new versions and a lot of really nice copies that never got out into the hobby, but they are here now. One of my concerns for all of this, looking at it in the long term, is that the original broadcasts are really, really old. I mean, it was old time radio. Now it's elderly radio. I mean, it's difficult to listen to some of these things and not pick up something. They say, "Gosh, somebody listening today won't understand this." Um, we've been dealing with listening to these programs. I know myself for almost 50 years now. So you pick up a lot of things about the culture and the times of that period, but somebody getting into the hobby right now won't know some of these things, and so they won't have context. They won't put it in the right perspective. So here's some of the questions, like, why would somebody worry about what wine goes with bean casserole, right? And that was one of the Roma wine ads that you want to serve their sauterne or whatever it was. Um, with a bean casserole. Well, bean casserole, why? Wouldn't you serve that with some kind of meat or some kind of fish? It was the ads were during World War II austerity. So a lot of the meats were going overseas, and at home we were eating things whatever we could find at a reasonable cost that was easy to produce here. So without that perspective, some of these ads look hokier than they really are, but they were actually responding to the situations historically that were going on at that particular time. One of my favorites in the shows is when somebody hides in the in front of the seat of the back seat on the floor, and the person driving the car has no clue that they're there. Well, with the smaller cars that we've had for a few decades now, where space is at a premium, nobody can fit on the floor in the back seat, and you'd notice right away that somebody was in the car. So how does backseat driver actually work? Because everybody would notice now. So you have to explain that cars were much larger then, and different aspects about that. One of my favorites is the show Alibi Me, where somebody is killed by smacking them in the head with a desk phone. I could barely kill a mosquito with my iPhone. So how do you kill a person with a desk phone? And then some of the shows have a plot of arson and other fire aspects of fire. Well, we don't have the same fear of fire that people had back in the 1940s and the 1950s, because our homes are built differently, our buildings are made differently. There are sprinkler systems, there's smoke alarms, there's all kinds of things that, while fire is something to be concerned about, there was really deep-seated fear at that time when a story on Suspense would come out about arson or a string of fires. And when you look at the newspapers of that time, every week there's some story about a big fire somewhere where there was a loss of life and people were thrown out of homes or something like that. So when somebody is listening to the Night Reveals, they don't get a sense of the terror that listeners may have had in that, or the urgency to, how do you solve this? And then one of my other favorites is Love, Honor, or Murder, where and the first time it's done is Elliot Lewis is a cab driver, and somebody leaves some massive amount of money in the car, and he's not going to give it back because nobody will ever know. And you listen to this and say, well, of course, the person is going to call on their cell phone and tell them that it's right. So many of these plots, a cell phone or a text message would force the writer to come up with some kind of different thing. So suspense dramas hold up a lot better in terms of the context of the times today than a lot of the comedies do, and many of the other things. But there are still times when the plot hinges on something that would be very, very simple to take care of today. And that may turn some new listeners off. We just should be aware of that. We should be careful of the kinds of things that new listeners get. so that they don't get discouraged in that particular way. And we want to expand their curiosity in about the era, not just the particular program. This you will like this chart when you see it, when you print it out yourself, but I've updated the chart. This goes through all the different eras of Suspense, who was the producer, the starting dates, the ending dates, and the like. And each one of them has a particular aspect about what's different about their production. When Suspense was sponsored, it had the micromanagement and the interference of the advertiser. And sometimes that was good, and sometimes that was bad. All right. But they had a budget that was relatively large for them to do all kinds of wonderful things with the orchestra, sound effects, with getting better actors and the like. So the Roma period is the favorite of a lot of people. There's an excitement in Roma, especially after the Pacific War is done. You can sense an enthusiasm in the studio when they are acting, and just the whole performances are different. Whereas a few years before, there was a lot of the performances seemed, and the announcements seemed very, very dire about what was going on. Especially 42 to 43 were difficult years for the war. So you could pick up some of that in the programs. And then the hour-long format, which is basically a disaster. And William Spear and Robert Montgomery were ready to go for a full year on that. And William Spear decides that when they find out that William Paley is negotiating for a half-hour show sponsor behind their back, that's when William Spear quits. So it became an absolute mess. But when Autolite comes around, we have a year of terrific shows with Anton M. Leader, and I have a slide about those. And then William Spear comes back, and then Elliot Lewis starts under Autolite for quite a while. And then we go into the Sustain show with no advertisers, with no sponsors. I want to be very clear. The sponsor was the key person, not selling advertising. The sponsor bankrolled the entire thing from $1 to the last dollar. By the time you get to William N. Robeson, they're just selling ad time. Those advertisers had no sway over the kinds of things that William N. Robeson would be producing. They were just buying time, very often as a package of time on other programs, and Suspense was just one among many. And then it moves to New York, and that's the area that we're starting to work on. It's in some ways, the New York programs are undiscovered. Not everybody has listened to all the programs. I have a long time ago, and yes, some of them are awful, but some of them are really, really good. And when you find out the budget constraints that they were on, they were basically calling in experienced New York actors somewhere around 1 o'clock, and by 5 o'clock they had recorded the entire show. They do a quick desk read, then they do a rehearsal, and then they do the final recording. And they would record the rehearsal and the final recording, and then mix and match as they had to do that. But the budgets were just absolutely terrible. Now, last time, I think it was the Theater 5 thing I did last time. That was a totally different situation. ABC was putting money into that, where CBS was starving the format. ABC was putting lots of money in it. Neither one of them worked, but you could tell that the productions at Theater 5 were much more polished than some of the things on Suspense. Paul Roberts worked on CBS Radio Workshop with William N. Robeson. 1 week they did from New York, 1 week they did from Hollywood. So I'm sure when Robeson turned over Suspense to New York and Paul Roberts, that there was some confidence that it was going to be handled well. And Roberts did a very good job in terms of keeping it as much up to Hollywood standards as they could. There's some really good episodes in there. But take a look at the chart when you be able to download the PDF. I'll be sending the PDF of the files to Frankie. He could put them up. We're counting suspense shows has been an issue. People sometimes count the forecast audition. It was such a mess that it shouldn't be counted because it was a broken show right from the outset. They couldn't find a single sponsor to go near it. So they had to reformulate it and wait for a while. And then Suspense came in summer of 1942. And then there's a recording that I'll talk about later, the 1958 episode of Misfire. That was never broadcast. So those are two programs that some people put to come up to 945 episodes. It's actually 943 the way we're counting now. And when you add back in the East and the West programs, there were 1,150 broadcasts. And of the 410 Roma East and West, we now have well more than half of them. And they're sitting out there in collections. Sometimes one program sounded not as good as the other broadcast. And a lot of the Pioneer collectors say, oh, we already got a good one. What do we need the West one for? So we do find them. There's a program with where the gun didn't go off at the right time on the sound effects table, and Hans Conried had the lines at that time, and you hear Hans Conried without any pause, just buying time, adding dialogue to it until the sound effects artist picked up the second gun and got it to go. So you don't. Those are very, very revealing as to what was going on in the studio and how polished this was. Suspense was under threat of cancellation numerous times. So getting its 20 years in was really quite good. Said a lot for the series. It was renewed after being threatened, probably because it was an anthology and there was not a big star that the CBS had to pay a lot of money. They were very flexible in doing that, and the show quality was very good. By the end of the run, they had moved it to Sundays, which was a change in the patterns of listening to radio. So it was on Sunday afternoons with some other shows. That was often drive time, coming back from some kind of family trip, captive audience in a car, or listening at home while you were doing something else, as opposed to just 10 years or so before where 3 or 4 people might be at home listening to the same program. So it survived, it adapted to the times, and it never really had a decline in quality of performance or scripts, maybe a quality in terms of how rich the budgets were. But it stayed good. This is a chart I made from some of the data in Jim Ramsberg's Network Radio Ratings, which is a good book and worth getting. It's very small print, so get ready for that. But get it. Jim was in the radio business for decades. That was his career, and it's got some marvelous detail of the era in it. It's on Amazon still. You can buy it as a new book. You can see the ratings here of the show going up in the Spear years. It just kept on growing. Suspense was always a top 10 show once it got out of its first and second year. It was tops with when Anton Leader was there. It probably could have been better because when Leader came on in 1948 was when Suspense was off the air for a few weeks as they transitioned from the 60-minute version back to Autolite. But then you can start seeing the effect of television begin to come in. So when Elliot Lewis takes over the show, the audience is about 60% of what it was just 2 years before, and it declined by another third by the time Elliot Lewis left. So they were fighting a very, very tough battle. And also Suspense was on television for those particular times. Most of the Suspense television episodes that are around are up on YouTube and archive.org. They're easy, very easy to find. Sometimes they did the same radio scripts with some changes in it because you can only shoot so many things in a small television studio. And then you see how it leveled out with under Norman Macdonald and Anthony Ellis, and then William N. Robeson. So the market had changed dramatically in that time. Now, how many of these episodes are what we call truly missing, meaning that they were done only once on Suspense? They were not repeated anytime. And there are 12. And when we started doing this, it was closer to 18, I think it was. So we're finding them. And there is an effort among the groups that do recreations to go after these missing programs. A lot of it's with my urging. We have scripts for all of these shows. Sometime in May, Project Audion, who produces some terrific recreations, is going to be doing the episode Deadline, which is I think it's a terrific script. The other ones that are missing, Mission of the Beta is about submarines. William N. Robeson's script from Man Behind the Gun episode was repurposed into part of this. Massacre at the Little Bighorn is about the night before the massacre at Little Bighorn. I think Mission of the Beta might be difficult to do, but I think people start to look at Massacre at the Little Bighorn and said, gosh, how are we going to create a massacre in the radio studio? That may be difficult, but some of them, they're good. The life of Nellie James, I'll talk about that on an upcoming slide, is excellent. Murder on the Westbound Limited is about a prisoner being transported by train. That's a great episode, extremely well done. Art is the American Radio Theater. They've been doing some of the Suspense recreations for quite a while. I have a page devoted to Suspense recreations, and I'll make sure that Frank has that for you. So Lizzie Borden. We like Lizzie Borden, don't we? She killed her family in Fall River and was acquitted, and it became a very, very famous story nationally, but also a story that was written about both in fiction and in true crime, if there was really a true crime genre at that time for books beyond detective magazines. It became one of the first episodes of Suspense, but they changed it to The Life of Nellie James. And as you see, I have a little snippet from the script, where the original script must have been written as Lizzie Borden, and they had to go through and cross it all out, and one of them slipped. The lawyers may have been concerned because Borden had passed away 15 years before. And maybe there was some concern about that. So they changed it. It's a very, very good script. When I saw a copy of it, a lot of it was edited out, so they must have had a time issue. But when Project Audion did it, they did completely. They even left in all the stuff that had been edited out for the broadcast. And then it was done 2 other times, but there's a tendency in the hobby when you see the same title or you see the same subject, thinking that, that they're just doing it again. They're not. Suspense did this 3 different times, 3 different ways. So the first one was the actual story, but they called it Nellie James. The second one, Fall River Tragedy, was based on the court case and was concentrating there. And then there was a stage play by Lillian Della Torre, who was a very famous mystery writer and was at one time the head of the Mystery Writers of America. She had a stage play, and Anthony Ellis adapted that for the show. So there were 3 very different ways of looking at this. But Nellie James is only available as a recreation, and I would strongly recommend it. They did a terrific job on it. Another very interesting one is the White Rose murders, a Cornell Woolrich story, which appeared first in the short-lived pulp called Baffling Detective Mysteries. I think that some of those titles of the pulps are just terrific. And it was adapted for the show, and a maniac murders women and leaves them with their white rose. Well, it turns out that an LA detective named Steve Hodel was listening to a Suspense one night. He had a cassette of this particular show, and he realized that it followed the pattern of a case that he was working on, because his father was a serial killer, and he didn't realize that until many, many years later. And his website is really great, and his books are terrific. Imagine going through, you're a detective, and you finally figure out decades later that your father was killing these unsolved cases from 30-something years ago. And the Suspense story fit the pattern of this particular crime, and he was able to link it up. But that's one of the creepiest parts of Suspense. In some ways, it's not all that good a show, but it was good enough for George Hodel to go out and murder somebody in a Los Angeles park. A lot of folks don't realize that William Spear's heart problems affected Suspense, and it's kind of weird the way it happened. He got a heart attack after the White Rose murders, and Robert Louis Cheon, who became a very famous broadcasting executive, all these people who were working on Suspense at this time were very young. He flew in to help cover some of the episodes until Spear returned. And then the second time Spear had a heart attack was after the East broadcast of Donovan's Brain Part 1. At that time, Roma Wines couldn't clear a national time slot with CBS, so the East Coast was getting programs on Thursdays, and then they call everybody back into the studio on Mondays to do a West Coast. And Mountain, I think Mountain was also picking that up. So Wells and Spear are out for dinner. They had known each other for over a decade. Wells always felt that he owed something to William Spear, because Spear was the first person to hire him for the program March of Time in the early 1930s. So they became very, very close friends. And as Wells grew in prominence, he always tried to do things for William Spear. So they were always together whenever they could. But Spear had another heart attack after having dinner with Wells. So here you are. It's the East Coast program. Who's going to take care of the West Coast broadcast on the Monday? So they get Cheon to go back out from New York. And the way Donovan's Brain was written, Wells essentially wrote that with Robert L. Richards, and they used the movie script for I think it's Lady and the Monster, which was the first adaptation of the Siodmak book. And Wells was basically in charge. I mean, he knew what he wanted to get. I mean, it's the guy who did War of the Worlds and all that stuff. Nobody's going to push him around in the radio studio. So you never knew that Spear was gone for those. But when they do Fugue in C minor, the first show after Part 2 of Donovan's Brain, that East Coast broadcast is quite different. And the kids in the program are missing cues. And Ida Lupino, if you listen to her voice very, very carefully, she's trying to draw them out. You know, read your script. Just say the line. Don't worry about it. She obviously can't say that while they're on the air, but if you go to the blog post of this, it specifies the differences between the two broadcasts. If you want to listen to the show, just to listen to the show, listen to the West broadcast. But if you're curious about what can go wrong in a studio, it's during the East broadcast. And then the third time he has a heart attack. So he's having one a year here, is during the episode Beyond Good and Evil. And Charles Vanda comes back into the studio. Now, Vanda was the creator of Suspense. And sometime during the summer of 1942, he got called into the service. And Vanda was one of the executives who built the Armed Forces radio service. That was part of their job. A bunch of broadcasting executives were there to do that. And there was always a kind of a tension between Vanda and Spear, not always of their doing, that Spear was always getting credit for being the creator of Suspense when it was Vanda that did it. And Spear was always telling people that, no, it was Vanda's idea, but the publicity always read it in a totally different way. So the program after Beyond Good and Evil, Vanda's there for the second week, Vanda changes the script and saying, and Charles Vanda presents Suspense. And CBS had a fit when he did that, so they didn't do it the next week, but that started the process. Vanda did really well in broadcasting. He was the producer of the Abbott and Costello show. How fitting it was that we had an Abbott Costello already this morning, and he became quite a philanthropist when he retired to the arts. And he moved when he retired. He moved to Las Vegas and did a lot of philanthropy with the arts and the Philharmonic and all there. Spear, on the other hand, passed away when he was 68. So he didn't get the extra 20 years that Vanda had, unfortunately. So here's Dime a Dance with Lucille Ball. Cornell Woolrich loves serial killers, I guess. He had one in White Rose Murders, and now he's got one in Dime a Dance. Lucy didn't like the script. She was, as they're going through the rehearsals, she didn't think a lot of it made a whole lot of sense. So Spear is taking notes and rewriting the script, and they're not finished by the time of broadcast. So Spear is still working on the end of the script, handing her pages that she did not rehearse. So here at the climax of the story, as the last 3 pages, right? She was reading that off Spear's handwritten revisions. I hope he had good handwriting, because when I see his signature, the answer is no. So perhaps the script secretary over was serving that evening did it. But that was during the East Coast. The West Coast, I don't think we have that copy of the program to see that. But that's one of the things that was going on in the studio. You couldn't hear when there was the problem with the gun in the program that Hans Conried was in. You can't hear this going on in this particular broadcast either. Now, a lot of people wondered back in the Roma days what they did during East and West. Now, Suspense usually wasn't 3 hours difference from the time it went on East. It was 4 hours. They did the West a little extra time. I think it was a better time for those particular markets. So they would have some free time, and they would go to the restaurant that was attached to KNX radio, which was where the CBS studios were, and they would eat there. Sometimes they would walk to go see friends up at NBC or a place called the Key Club, but generally they were over in Brittingham's. Now, during the episode, or for the episode Lady in Distress, Ava Gardner was hired for that, and she walks in with Orson Welles, who is Spear's old buddy, of course. Gardner and Welles were an item at that time. So Spear decides to write a part in the show for Welles, and it turns out to be the last time he appears on the series. He hadn't appeared on the series after Donovan's Brain. He was doing other stuff. So they write in a section of the script where he is a gas attendant. And Gardner's line is, "Who does that man think he is, Orson Welles?" And that got picked up in the Variety and other places. So listen for that. It's about halfway through the show. But they were doing things on the fly. Spear was ran very, very loose rehearsals. They were always joking around, and everybody knew when he pointed at them, all the silliness was off. And they had marvelous, marvelous rehearsals, but they all were pros and they knew what to do. This is one of the more fascinating episodes. They call me Patrice, which is it's kind of an odd title, but it's about a woman pretending to be somebody else. But the story behind the script is even more fascinating. The star is Susan Peters, who was working at MGM, and her family was into hunting, and she basically shot herself in a gun accident that either or the gun fell or whatever, and she had a spinal injury, and she became paralyzed from the waist down. So she was only 23 or 24 when that happened, and she was starting to rebuild her career. She was actually doing theater where they would find parts for her where she would be sitting or in a wheelchair or whatever for her parts, and she finds herself on Suspense. Well, you can tell that she's a really, really skilled actor because they sent her the wrong script. So for 2 days before the broadcast, she's studying an incorrect script. And when she gets into the studio, she's handed this particular one. And what I find creepy about it is that the climax of the program is that the husband is murdered by a gunshot. And you again, you don't get a feeling that something is really up here during the production, but as you read about her career and the tragedy that's in her life, then you hear this episode, you get a totally different feeling about it. She got her career going a bit. She was working in a TV program called Miss Susan, where she was a wheelchair-bound lawyer. It was kind of like an Ironside, but 18 years or whatever it was before, and it was on 3 days a week. It was a soap opera, and it got a lot of very, very good comments in the press. There is a copy at the Library of Congress that no one can see unless you know Karl. Just walk into the Library of Congress, say, "I know Karl," and then you'll get to see the episode. But they write about it in their blog. One thing that makes her story even sadder is that she fell into such a deep depression that she just started to fail to thrive, and she passed away when she was only 31 years old. So now we have this marvelous performance to remember her by, and I've been meaning to go try to find some of the movies that she was in and take a look at those. But listen to it now that you have this information. The story is much more different. So Spear goes out in a huff after the 1 hour thing, and Anton Leader takes over some of those hour-long shows, and when Autolite comes in, he's the new producer. Spear needs something to do, so he takes over Philip Morris Playhouse, and there's a lot of Suspense episodes there. You'll see that. And I like the year that Anton Leader had for Suspense. There's some really marvelous shows. Many of them are listed here. He also got Betty Grable, Ralph Edwards, who are not considered good actors, to have some terrific performances. Jim and Marion Jordan, he got them there for Backseat Driver. That worked out really well. My favorite Suspense program is in the list, 3 O'Clock, which I think might be one of the greatest performances on radio ever, with Van Heflin. And it's just a terrific time. But he rubbed everybody the wrong way. He rubbed the actors the wrong way, who were entrenched. He wanted them to audition sometimes, but they were the stock actors for Suspense. He didn't get along with the producers of the executives at CBS, but somehow all these terrific programs came through. And then you can see that he had his arm twisted by Autolite. There's an episode called Celebration, and it involves a true story. One of the authors of the script was a reporter in 1929 when this incident happened. A man's wife was hospitalized. She was mentally ill and she was not improving, and he was so distraught living without her that he couldn't go on himself. So he gets permission to take her out for a day where they're going to go out in the car, have a picnic and all that. And he never let on that they were basically going to have a murder and a suicide. It's a very, very sad story. The people were in their mid-40s, and it made somewhat national news. So the original newspaper writer and a radio script writer prepare a script for Suspense. They cast Robert Young, and Autolite doesn't like it. Well, probably because the murder-suicide took place in a car, and it was just a little too gruesome for them. It interestingly starred Robert Young, who in the 1960s came out to talk about mental illness because he suffered from it greatly. So it's interesting. He was in 2 shows about mental illness on Suspense, this one, and also A Friend to Alexander. We'll talk about that one later. The ending just insults the intelligence of the audience. It's a horrible ending that they have. He basically has a clear shot and he misses, and it really turns out that they're fighting over the gun in the car, and it goes off, and she gets hurt. But then in the end, she's okay, but that's not the way it worked. So William N. Robeson took the original script and did it again when he was there and had no sponsor to tell him what to do, and they did it the way it was. And the actress was Joy LaFleur, a Canadian actress, and then tragically she passed away just 6 months after the show of drug and alcohol poisoning. So that one hangs over you a little bit more. You have the Susan Peters, now you have the Joy LaFleur. How do I listen to these programs knowing that these folks weren't going to be around much longer? But it just shows there was a great distrust of the sponsors. They loved the money, but they didn't like the interference. They were advertisers, and advertising agencies were scared of the audience, didn't want to offend anybody. So didn't even want to take the risk, even if it was a good story. So you have 2 versions of Celebration for that. And then another strange thing that happens with during the later years, Joan Crawford wants to be on Suspense, and the people at Suspense want Joan Crawford to be on Suspense, but she has mic fright. She can't stand radio, and she wanted them to pre-record. She thought radio should be like the film industry. You record something. If you don't like it, you record it again. It's a way of acting that, oh, let's try these lines this way. Oh no, now let's try these lines this way. And then somewhere in editing, they'd pick out whatever worked. Well, that doesn't work that way in radio. I was listening to an interview of Dick Beals, and he said, if you didn't read the lines the way you had to when you were on the air, you never worked again. So it's basically a totally different rule. So they're going to pay Crawford big money, and she wanted the script written just for her. So The Hand was written by Mel Dinelli. The story has undertones. It starts, of course, with a very big car accident. So you knew Autolite wasn't going to be particularly pleased. And it involves mental illness and drug addiction. So those are the kinds of things that Autolite said, oh, gee, let's do that one. So they knew they weren't going to do that. It was pretty obvious. The copy of the script, The Hand, that's floating around has Anton Leader's handwriting on it, and it says rejected by advertiser, right? And that's it. The copyright on the script was never renewed, so Dinelli probably didn't even believe in it either in the end. So they took another Dinelli script and they used it. They gave it a new title called The 10 Years. All this trouble delayed Crawford's appearance by a week. And during that time, when the publicity was going out that she was on Suspense, she started doing her own publicity. And she started leaking to the columnists. She started saying that radio was backwards and that CBS is cheap. And she's going to have to pay out of her own pocket for transcribing the show beforehand, when they should be doing that if they knew how to do this right. And it was going to be $900, which is $12,000 in today's money. And so this is really going well, isn't it? So the other thing is that she wants as much attention as possible. That this script by Mel Dinelli is so good that Jerry Wald, who was a very big movie producer at the time, he bought the rights for it. What probably happened is Jerry, Mel, and Joan went to lunch one day, and Mel handed Jerry $1 to say that they had a contract for him to do it, so they could put this in the with the press. They do the recording. Suspense had never done a pre-recorded show before. So they did it, and because the various costs of the with the musicians unions and other things, they recorded the drama, but then they would play the disc live, and they would add the orchestra live. So the orchestra would have to fit into the timing that was there, and also the ads had to be read live. So a lot of the recordings of the show that are in the hobby are only like 27 minutes long, but there were actually gaps in it that people have taken out that were done live. Now, I always wondered how this sounded. If you go to the Internet Archive page that has the recordings, you'll see how to do that later. When you look for this, on eBay about 5 years ago, there was a set of discs of an air check of this very program, fully intact, off WCBS AM in New York. And it's got the full program done that particular way, so you can hear how it turned out. It's also got all the local commercials, like the Campbell Soup commercial at the end. And Campbell's Soup was good back in 1949 too, just like in the 1960s when I heard it. But this did not go particularly well. But it did go out, and nobody really noticed in the listening audience, but the people at CBS did. So here you are, Anton Leader, and you're not getting along with anybody. You're delivering terrific ratings. You're expecting to be renewed, but you're fired. And one of the reasons he's fired is that Philip Morris Playhouse didn't want to continue their show that way. They wanted something cheaper, so they went to sponsor Casey Crime Photographer, and that freed up William Spear to come back to Suspense. So they didn't like, probably, I'm speculating here on this page, they probably didn't like Celebration the way that was handled and got manhandled. That the leaders probably should have known better than to propose that kind of script. Holiday Story was really back for Christmas, and all the publicity for the Christmas show for Suspense was about a Miles Connolly script he worked on It's a Wonderful Life, called Rich Man, Poor Man, which they were promoting as not having any violence, being a very wholesome kind of show. And here it is, it doesn't show up. So people are reading in the newspaper one thing, and then they're hearing, wait, this show sounds familiar. It's called Holiday Story, but that sounds like Back for Christmas. You know, the one where the guy kills his wife and buries her in the basement, right? So that's really, that says Christmas like nothing else, right? And then the whole thing with Joan Crawford, and then Death Has a Shadow. Bob Hope gets a horrible, horrible script. He's not very good at acting anyway. When he acts, he's Bob Hope. He's not the character. He's always Bob Hope. And some of the lines they gave him in the script are so awful They'd be awful for professional actors, full-time actors. And then there's another show called The Light Switch, which may be competing for one of the worst Suspense episodes ever, along with Never Follow a Banjo Act with Ethel Merman as the most horrible Suspense experiences you could have. So this is probably why Anton Leader didn't get renewed. And he was shocked. But then later, years later, he told someone he should have paid more time to his supervisor or the VP, Guy Della Chapa, that he should have made more friends with him and should not have been on his own as much as he did. So my favorite year, that year that Anton Leader was the producer, I like it even better than the Spear years, just as for consistency, but there was a lot of turmoil in the studio. And then one of the strangest things is to hear musicals on Suspense. Elliot Lewis was in a tough situation. He's competing against television in general. He's competing against the Suspense television program, which was produced out of New York with a totally different staff. So they come up with the idea that Suspense is going to change some of the programs they have. There's going to be a little bit more variety. And they say, we're going to do some musicals, but they're going to be Suspense style musicals. It's going to be a crime or whatever. And it's going to be not the kind of happy musical, but it's going to tell a story. The first one they did was probably the best one. It's The Wreck of the Old 97, about a train crash in Virginia in the early 1900s. And they get Harry Stanton. Not Harry Stanton was Saturday Night Live related to Harry Stanton. This is Harry Stanton, the singer on I think it's the Swan show. And Frank Lovejoy is in it. So they concoct a more of a mystery around this, and it's really, really well done. We now have a wonderful Armed Forces Radio Service copy of it that's very, very clean, as opposed to what collectors were suffering with for many years. They do Frankie and Johnny, basically the folk song or the bluesy song. They get Dinah Shore. The Margaret Whiting one was done 5 years later after Lewis is gone. They do Death of Barbara Allen, St. James Infirmary Blues. So they're dealing with just plain old music. They're dramatizing the music in some ways. The Story of Tom Dooley gets done twice, and Stanton comes back to sing that. But in 1958, the Kingston Trio has their big hit with that, so they're using clips of that. And then My True Love's Hair. But you know, it's weird. It just sounds weird. The Wreck of the Old 97 sounds more natural. Now, they were doing some musical shows that weren't musicals, but they had music background. You Were Wonderful with Lena Horne wasn't supposed to be a big music show, but as they were getting pressure with Lena making her first appearance and having a black performer be the lead, again, everybody's afraid of advertisers and afraid of the public, like they can't handle it. They added more music to that script to make it seem like she was having a musical performance rather than the typical kind of a script that they would get. She's terrific in it, and it all works just fine. But that was a very, very important part of Suspense history. And then Blood on the Trumpet with Ziggy Elman doing the music as there's a trumpeter in the story. And then one of the worst scripts performances, Never Follow a Banjo Act with Ethel Merman, but she does get to sing Zing Went the Strings of My Heart. And then they do it again with Margaret Whiting. She gets to sing some of her songs there. But music was part of musicals, in a sense, was part of Suspense. But music itself, with the orchestra, with the bridge music and all that, was a key part of Suspense's success. I got to go back one. Hold on. Here we go. Elliot Lewis takes over the series. And has a lot of other friends that he can bring in. Spear had his friends. Lewis was very friendly with John Garfield and wanted him to do this script called Concerto for Killer and Eyewitnesses. He's refused. Garfield's having his problems with the CBS blacklist, and Lewis thought he would get through it and held it for a future appearance. Garfield dies at age 39 of a heart defect. And Lewis is so ticked off at CBS. They were all getting geared up for the end of the season being sorry, wrong number, so they could get, big ratings numbers and the like, and get a lot of attention. Okay.
I'm sorry, I can't tell who's on mic. Please mute yourselves.
Okay. There we go.
Frustrating. Thank you. And also a little sad. Oh, okay, now you're showing up.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, Joe. I'm
Okay.
not. If I could track this down, I could just.
Melanie, your phone is on.
Okay.
Oh, well, I can definitely mute her there.
Okay, thank you. So Lewis canceled the sorry, wrong number, and he put in Concerto for Killer and Eyewitnesses, and he made himself the star of the show. Now, Lewis had kind of tired of acting. He loved doing Remley on Phil Harris and Alice Faye. He didn't like doing the serious stuff as much as he used to. So this was a big deal that he was coming in to do this last particular episode as a tribute to Garfield. Kaleidoscope may be one of the most fascinating performances on Suspense. It's a Ray Bradbury science fiction production. It had been done on other series like Dimension X, but it wasn't done this way. And the performances by William Conrad and what other people say, and the rest of the Gunsmoke cast, they're all here doing science fiction, and they're outstanding. And what makes it even more outstanding is to hear the story in wonderful sound, because Anthony Ellis's personal tape that he made of the episode, because they were so thrilled with this program, and the fact that then wife Georgia and their 6-year-old son Jonathan were on the show. Georgia and Jonathan were on at the very, very end. And the show was done live. So here you have a 6-year-old who's all excited about being in the studio with mom and dad, probably, and he's terrific. I don't believe he ever became an actor professionally, but this was all done live. The sound quality is stunning, so make sure you look for that at the Internet Archive on the Suspense Project page. They separated the actors into separate booths, because if they were wearing space helmets, they wouldn't be able to see side to side, right? So they wanted to make sure they duplicated that, and they got the right amount of delay between the dialogue. It's been circulating in bad sound for so long. It's like a totally new experience here. Suspense also took stories from the news. Many of you may have heard of the labor columnist Victor Rizel, who was active as a columnist in newspapers, I believe through the 1980s. He was on New York television. I remember seeing him there. He had an acid attack by the mob, and he was totally blinded, and he knew touch typing. So he was able to continue his writing career as a journalist, and they didn't find the guys who did it for months, but they wanted to put on a suspense program with this particular idea. So they changed the circumstances of the story, but everybody knew that it was based on the Victor Rizel thing. And I guess the CBS lawyers just kept delaying it. They didn't want it on because the two guys who actually made the attack and were paid to make the attack hadn't been caught yet. But the big story went ahead and did it. And they even had Victor Rizel on the program at the end to talk about it. So by that time, I guess they finally relented. So they broadcast the show on July 18th, and it was like another 3 or 4 weeks before the perpetrators were caught. One as an aside, one of the perpetrators got paid $1,000, and when he found out who it was, he asked for more money, so the mob shot him. Yes, it's tough being out there. Yes. This turned out to be one of my favorite episodes recently. Variations on a theme, and a lot of people hate it because they don't know Parley Bear and how funny it is to have the kind-hearted, most wonderful friend to collectors, Parley Bear, actually wanting to kill his wife. And you realize you're being set up. It's a prank. The script is a prank on the listeners. I'll just say that much. It's the terrific story. So he's this henpecked husband. He wants to go on his fishing trip, and he's going to take the wife, except she's in the trunk and she's all tied up and gagged, and he's going to dump her in the lake. But every time he does something, something goes wrong. So he has to do something else. He has to change his plans. And I can't imagine that they weren't laughing during the rehearsal because of just who Parley is, that he was such a kind-hearted person who would never do anything like that. So again, another program where it was in bad sound, and now we have it in terrific sound. It is so much more enjoyable now. A Friend to Alexander, another show about mental illness, but this one is by James Thurber. This man thinks he is a friend to Aaron Burr, Alexander Hamilton, and getting ready for the duel with Aaron Burr. It was done twice before and was very faithful to the Thurber story, with Robert Young and Richard Worf, who became a very big TV producer. But by this time, Anthony Ellis had a much different range of technologies to use, and he wasn't afraid to change the story in effect. So they had a story, a psychological drama called I Saw Myself Running, which has some really tremendous effects in it. And they basically turned A Friend to Alexander around, where instead of it's told from the outside in the Thurber story, where people are listening to this person who's having these mental delusions, to now it's the inside of the person who's having the delusions, and it's so much more powerful, and the effects are just absolutely terrific. And then you've got John Dehner, who may be one of the top 5 radio actors of all time, doing it. And it's so a lot of people would say, oh, this is the 3rd time they're doing A Friend to Alexander, I'll just skip listening to it. No, this is the one you want to hear. The other ones are nowhere near as good as this. Present Tense is another story that polarizes people. You don't know where you're listening to. This is like this is like watching the movie Groundhog Day, except everybody in the cast is taking some hallucinogenic of some kind. So it's a really weird thing. You don't know what you're listening to. And a lot of people really hate this story, whether it's produced on Escape or produced on Suspense. Vincent Price is absolutely terrific in it, but you have to go through a couple of steps to know what's happening. You should listen to Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, because it's kind of based on that idea, where Owl Creek Bridge is a much more serious story. A person who is about to be hanged is having memories of the people and the events that led up to that. And then you realize that person is basically all that happened in a split second. Well, this is kind of builds on that, except it's a much more modernized story. And if you listen to Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, you'll get the flavor of what James Poe is trying to do with this. So you may not like it. There are some people who hate it, and as I have to tell you, I listened to this thing about 5 or 6 times before I could really grasp what was going on and why it was going on. But in the end, I felt like it was really worth it to figure this out. Now, if you were listening to this on a Sunday afternoon, you say, oh, gee, let me listen to Suspense today, and you heard this, you wouldn't know what the heck you were listening to. So you've been forewarned. And now the misfire. This is a great little story. It's about setting off an atomic bomb test. Okay, that's a bit of a backstory, but it's written by Tom Hanley, one of the sound effects artists. He was working with Ross Murray and Gus C. Bays for years and years and years, and they had become script writers in addition to being sound effects artists. But he tried to write some scripts, and they were tended to be rejected. But he wrote this one, and don't you know, first time out, it's like hitting a grand slam in the bottom of the ninth to win the game. He gets a Writers Guild Award for the script. And that's absolutely terrific. So here it is, beginning of September, and CBS is deciding, no, you know that date, September 28th, we're not going to have a show that day. We're just going to skip it because the affiliates are running NFL games, and that's opening weekend. Can you believe that was opening weekend was that late? You're going to start on 7 Saturdays in a row, beginning on October 4th. So here it was, a few days before this broadcast, he was supposed to be one of the honorees at the Writers Guild dinner, and they were going to do a little thing of having this program broadcast. Well, they recorded the drama. It's got a much better cast than it was the first time. William Conrad is the narrator instead of Jack Carson, and it's just outstanding. But it's floated around. People added a suspense opening to it. It never had it. There was something that the collector added. We have a terrific copy, and it's really good to listen to. So it never made it to the air, but it was in a bunch of reels that somebody had that they picked up from CBS, and there it is. It's excellent. This is more of a trivia kind of thing, so you could put this in some of your contests. Name all of the husbands and wives who work together on Suspense, and this is a list. The favorites here are Frank Lovejoy and Joan Banks, and but others. Howard Duff and Ida Lupino did it on a Country Road. We have a terrific copy of that now from AFRS. And some of the usual stuff, like you've seen them here before, but this is a good reference. John McIntyre and Jeanette Nolan may not have starred in them, but they appeared in a lot of them together. And then Parents and Children were on Suspense, not always at the same time, but Gene and June Lockhart appeared on Suspense, Frank and Claudia Morgan, and Frank and Bob Reddick. And then the only time everybody appeared all at once was in Kaleidoscope with Anthony, Georgia, and Jonathan Ellis. I was surprised that I thought there might be more of this because the show was on a long time, but it was just these four. Suspense at the Movies. I have a page set up. It's easy to go to. Some of the scripts became movies. Some of the movies became scripts. Sorry, Wrong Number is the most famous one. To Find Help became Beware My Lovely by Mel Dinelli. To Find Help with Frank Sinatra. Sinatra took a lot of bad reviews for the way he played To Find Help, but when you see the movie, you'll realize Sinatra played it the exact way that the script was written. There was an interaction between the movie studios and Suspense, and it wasn't just to get guests, but a lot of times they were looking to see what kind of scripts Suspense had so that could become a movie property. And you could tell which ones William Spear liked because he repeated them on other programs. So if you look at this particular list here, you'll see that he used a lot of Suspense scripts on Philip Morris Playhouse. When he came back from Philip Morris Playhouse, he took some of those scripts with him and used them on Suspense. And he also did a 13-week run for The Clock for ABC when he had his little hissy fit with the hour-long Suspense. ABC hired him to try to turn around The Clock franchise, which he could not. But some of those scripts there became useful for going both ways there. And then he repeated so many of the scripts during his time that you could tell he wasn't going to repeat a bad script for a second time. This is the list of the scripts that he reused whenever there was a problem. If a guest couldn't show up at a particular time, he went right to the file cabinet and pulled out a favorite script for them to do that week. Because all these shows were done live. There was no recording during this particular time. Now, if you wanted to listen to any of these shows, they're being put up at the Internet Archive, which is free. You can download FLAC, you can download MP3, you can listen to them by streaming. So there's the address that you can go to see all of them. There are over 800 episodes up there now, which is, I think, absolutely amazing. I feel a little tired about it now, but it's coming to a close. And don't forget the blog. Every day there's a new post about the Suspense episode. Today's was a load of dynamite, which is a bad episode and has continuity issues, and we identify what those are in there. So and that link always has the link to the Internet Archive recording. The blog post is also a good place to go if you have a particular episode you want to get background for. Just go into the search box, put in the name of the show, and you'll be able to find it very easily. So that is it for tonight. We're staying up late, but I think we still have time for questions. And I know you've got to get to the answers for the quiz. Everything was A. No. So send your questions, put it in the chat box or verbalize them.
That was just outstanding, Joe. Thank you so much. There was so much information. My mind's still reeling. I took some notes and I'm looking forward to delving into some of this a lot more. Are there any questions or curiosities at this point? I'm sure there must be. Good heavens, the amount of information was truly staggering. Anybody?
I just wanted to say to thank you for those. I was making some notes of some episodes to check out. I think I'll start with 3 o'clock, which I'd never heard of.
Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah. It was done on a couple of times on other programs. Sleep No More did a version. Was on an Alfred Hitchcock, not Alfred Hitchcock Presents. It was on a short-lived series that he did, I think, for ABC called Suspicion with E.G. Marshall. Except there it's called 4 o'clock. That's on, you can see that on YouTube. But the Van Heflin performance is just stunning, just absolutely stunning.
Thank you for and I also want to hear on a Lonely Road with Howard Duff and Ida Lupino. But thank you.
Oh yeah, yeah. They're okay. Yes, they're doing okay. My favorite though is the first one with Cary Grant. But yeah, they're fine. Let's just say the Lupino-Duff relationship was stormy right from the start. Right?
Oh.
It was. I mean, gosh, they were legally separated for 25 years, and they had no. It's such a crazy story.
And yet they decided to do stuff together.
Still, yes. I mean, they had to make money, I guess.
Yeah.
But they were back together at that time. It's just odd reading the stories about Duff with his blacklist problems. Howard had a terrific lawyer, a terrific agent who was always getting him jobs, even though he was blacklisted. And they weren't the best of jobs, but he was always in the news. He never badmouthed a sponsor or the loss of his Sam Spade role. And he even fell down the steps and broke his leg. And there are press releases about him being in the bar with with a big sock over his cast. Now, so he was always in the news, even though he couldn't work.
Yeah.
And it did work. And the biggest factor of him staying working was marrying Ida Lupino.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing I should mention. There's an episode called Eyewitness. So you have Duff is thrown off the air at CBS, and he really didn't do much radio work after that. He was basically doing movies and some TV. And they come back. Robeson couldn't work at CBS. He came back in 1955 with an episode called Nobody Ever Quits, which became Night on Red Mountain, which is actually all about his exile from CBS. So if you read the blog post of that, you'll see certain connections in that story to Robeson not being able to work. But when Duff comes back to do a show called Eyewitness under Robeson, there's no mention there that of what's going on with Duff and Lupino. And so Duff couldn't work at CBS, yet a few weeks after that show, they're doing a comedy series on CBS called Mr. Adams and Eve, which Lupino was nominated for an Emmy for, and they got big bucks from CBS. So it's like overnight CBS turned off the blacklist, and they just started rehiring all the people that they were spurning, so there were collectors who believed that, oh, Duff is back at CBS with his tail between his legs, but you never made the connection with what was going on in the other side of the business where they did Mr. Adams and Eve. I think there's 4 or 5 episodes up on YouTube. That they did 66 of them. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for the suggestion and just for and for all the backstory or background information. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sometimes reading the blog post takes longer than listening to the show.
Frank, you had your hand up.
I did. I always thought, Joe, that it was curious that on, it helps if I did.
You're on mute, Frank.
You're muted, Frank.
Frank, you just muted yourself.
Okay. I always thought, Joe, it was curious that on Backseat Driver, that Jim and Marion Jordan were identified as Fibber McGee and Molly, and never identified as Jim and Marion Jordan on that show.
It is funny, but that's the way they were better known. I mean, everybody knew them that way. It's listening to the first time that they did it, it's clear Jim is doing okay. Molly is a little tentative in everything that she's doing, but they did it twice on the show.
And then Parley Bear did it once.
Yes. I forget who we did that with, but yes. The script was written by someone who was very active in San Francisco local radio in the 1930s and 1940s. And she became a salesperson for production equipment in radio and television. And that was the only script that she wrote that got any kind of national recognition. Sally Thorson was the name. And gosh, Suspense had some really great one-hit wonder writers. On a Country Road was written by someone who was their only script ever. They became a prominent journalist in Washington for the New York Journal American. And he was a journalism student when he wrote it.
Your point, Joe, is well taken, because I was looking on Marion Jordan, and once they became Fibber McGee and Molly, any program on which they appeared was always just Fibber McGee and Molly. Every time. So you're right.
Any other questions or observations?
I've got a question, and I may have missed your explanation, but were there scripts that were purchased but for some reason not produced? And does someone have those in a file? Are they in an archive? And have you reviewed any of them? And are there any, unknown masterpieces that never made it to the air but still exist in written form?
Yes, some of the scripts are at University of California, Santa Barbara. Those are the KNX collection that was originally at the Thousand Oaks Library that got moved about two years ago. The Hand is there. That's the Donnelly script that got turned down for the Crawford appearance. That script, Rich Man, Poor Man, that I mentioned that for some reason wasn't done that Christmas in 1948. That script is there. That's sitting waiting for somebody to recreate. And there's an Arch Obler script that was supposed to be on Suspense called Him or Me that I don't think he got made until the 1960s. So that is there as well. There's not a whole lot of them because a lot of the scripts that were rejected were returned to the writers. So, but there are some that were there.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's great. Anybody else? Questions or observations?
Someone did a recreation of The Hand in 1960s, and it's okay. It should be done with the better technology that we have today.
Yes, the technology definitely changes the dynamic.
It does. It does. If you've never seen a Project Audion recreation, it's done over Zoom, and they've learned how to deal with the delay that the Zoom technology has, and to tighten up the video, do really good video editing on that. And the one on Lizzie Borden is just terrific. So watch that one.
Definitely great. Well, this has just been amazing. Anybody else? Any other questions? I think you gave us so much information, Joe, that people are just like, whoa. I suspect that people will be reaching out to you.
It's great.
In the
So
coming days and weeks.
Yeah, the email address is suspenseotr@gmail.com, or send a note to Frank. He knows where to find me. And there's also, go to the blog, and you'll see lots of things there. And I'm on the, if you're on Facebook, I'm on the Old Time Radio Researchers Group Facebook page all the time. I don't make any personal posts on Facebook. I only make Old Time Radio posts on Facebook. So that's where you can find me.
In other words, you can run, but you can't hide.
Yes, I have to be there somewhere.
That's outstanding.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right. And I'll be at Mank. I've already got my hotel. So.
Oh, good for you. That's
Yes.
great. Yes, that's very exciting that it's gone back to September.
Yes.
Instead of June. June would have been.
All right. Well, thanks very much. Good to see everyone again.
Take care, Joe. Thank you. Thank you so much. So now, moving right along, Kelly, could you favor us with the answers to the quiz, please?
I would be happy to. So let me just bring. Oh, shoot! Did I stop share? Let me bring back. Wait, did I have?
You may have. There it is.
Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay. I had a couple things. Okay. All right, class. This is an honor code kind of a thing, since we don't have a way of grading you all. Next, please. So here we go. Number 1, Lorene Tuttle was the first to play Gildersleeve's niece Marjorie. Who was the second? Does anyone offhand know who the second was? The answer is A, Mary Lee Robb. Question 2. Raymond Edward Johnson was the first host of Inner Sanctum Mysteries. When he left to serve in the Army, who took his place? Was it Paul McGrath, Barry Kroger, Maurice Tarplin, or Ernest Chappell? The answer is A, Paul McGrath. Question 3. Henry Aldridge actor Ezra Stone entered the service. Each of the following actors subsequently played the part of Henry before Stone returned. Who was the first to replace him? Bobby Ellis, Raymond Ives, Norman Tokar, or Dickie Jones? And the answer is C, Norman Tokar. Number 4, we all remember Agnes Moorehead was the first to play the lovely Margot Lane on The Shadow. Who was next to play it after Agnes Moorehead? Leslie Woods, Grace Matthews, Margot Stevenson, or Gertrude Anderson? And the answer is C, Margot Stevenson. Question 5, Frank Parker was the first featured singer for Jack Benny. When he left the show, who was his replacement? Was it Kenny Baker, Dennis Day, Michael Bartlett, or Bob Crosby? And the answer is C, Michael Bartlett. Question 6. Harold Perry played the Gildersleeve character on Fibber McGee and Molly, then got his show The Great Gildersleeve. When Perry left that show, he was replaced by which sound-alike actor? Was it A, Paul Frees, B, Willard Waterman, C, Bill Thompson, D, Alan Reed? Does anyone know the answer?
Willard Waterman.
It is Willard Waterman, exactly. Can anyone tell us the most famous role of Alan Reed?
Fred
Flintstone.
Fred Flintstone, excellent, excellent. Okay. Moving right along, question 7. Marlon Hurt played the maid Beulah on Fibber McGee and Molly. At his untimely passing, which actor took over the role? Was it A, Ethel Waters, B, Louise Beavers, C, Hattie McDaniel, or D, Butterfly McQueen? Does anyone know this answer? It was C, Hattie McDaniel. Yes, yes. 8. An actor using the pseudonym Jack Deeds played the Lone Ranger for 1 episode. The next actor played the part for 8 years until his untimely death in a car accident. Who was he? A, Ernie Winstanley, B, Brace Beamer, C, Earl Grasser, or D, J. Michael? Does anyone know who played the Lone Ranger for those 8 years?
C.
It was, indeed, it was Earl Grasser. Very good. Question 9. Al Hodge was the first to play the Green Hornet. He too went off to serve in World War II. Who took over the role from Hodge? Was it A, Brace Beamer, B, Robert Hall, C, Jack McCarthy, or D, Donovan Faust? Anyone? I think I heard it. Did I hear it?
McCarthy.
It was not McCarthy.
I think it was Robert Hall.
It was not Robert Hall.
Oh.
It was D, Donovan Faust. And last but not least, on Duffy's Tavern, several actresses played Miss Duffy. The first, Shirley Booth, was married to the show's creator and lead actor, Ed Gardner. Who was the next Miss Duffy when the Gardners' marriage went south? Okay, so was it A, Ethel Merman, B, Florence Hallop, C, Hazel Shermet, or D, Mercedes McCambridge? Does anyone know who was the second Miss Duffy?
Was it B, Florence Hallop?
It was indeed B. Very good, Edgar. Yes,
Yeah.
Florence Hallop, who I actually know from a few episodes of Night Court. But yes, so Florence Hallop was the second Miss Duffy. So we cannot.
Sister of Bobby Hallop, Dead End
Right.
Kid.
She what?
She's the sister of Bob. Is it Bobby Hallop, the Dead End Kid?
Oh, okay. Okay, I did not know that. Oh, interesting.
Billy Hallop. I'm sorry, Billy Hallop.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. So yes, I knew her from one role. But anyway, thank you all for your participation, and thank you to Frank for the quiz.
Yes, thank you, Frank, for the quiz, and thank you, Kelly, for your masterful handling of the curves that have been thrown to you tonight. I appreciate it very, very much. The other quiz looked really nice when it got set up, but anyway. So there we are. That concludes the evening's programs.